Greetings everyone, I'm Kevin and today I'm going to do an original tag called book series tag. I created this tag because I thought it would be kind of fun to have a tag for book series specifically, and I couldn't find any and I really wanted to do one, so I decided, hey, if there isn't one, I'm gonna make one. And if you're interested in doing this tag, I will have all of the questions down below. So the first question is the best first book. And this can either be like the best book in the series, where you think that the first book is better than the other books in the series, or maybe it ticks all of the boxes for a first book. I chose book one of the Spencer Cohen series because I do prefer this over the second and the third book. I just really love this. It's a fake dating romance. It's extremely short. I don't even think it's 200 pages long. It's not. It's 153 pages long. So it's a very bingeable series. It's a trilogy and we follow Spencer Cohen. He has this kind of service kind of thing where he fake dates people. So people can, like, anyone can just book him to pretend to be their boyfriend or fiance or something, and he will go on dates with them. And it can be usually that someone either wants to have a +1 to a thing, or someone wants to make their ex jealous, things like that. So he has this fake dating service thing going. Then we have this guy called Andrew, and Andrew books Spencer to make his ex jealous. And as magic of fake dating romance goes, they fall in love. And the thing is with this book series that I absolutely love is the fact that me and Spencer Cohen are very similar. We're extremely similar. I relate a lot to him. Like, I cried so many times during the series. He is a child of toxic parents. He doesn't have any contact with his family whatsoever, and I completely relate to that. And he has trust issues and commitment issues, abandonment issues, and I'm like, yes, I relate. And I feel like the representation of that is really well done, and I love it for that. And it was kind of like soothing for me because I read it the summer of 2020. What happened with my family happened in 2019. So this happened, I read this like almost exactly 1 year later after that, and it felt like very therapeutic for me. And I enjoyed this the most because this is, you know, like they fall in love in this book and get together. And with romance, I prefer having like a slow burn and like of pining and falling in love. And I'm not as interested in the dating once they get together. I don't want 2 books with them being in a relationship. That's kind of like, I prefer this book. And the next question is worst first book. And this doesn't have to be like, oh, this book is horrible, I should have DNF'd it. It can be like, this book is in the series, it's not the best book in the series. Meaning it's not a 1-star DNF kind of I hate it thing. It's more of a like, it's not the best book in the series. And the book that I chose for this is Captive Prince, the first book in the Captive Prince trilogy. Like, the story follows Damien, and he is the prince. He's the crown prince of a kingdom called Achilles. Don't really know how to pronounce it. But he is kidnapped and taken to Vern. I think it's pronounced Vern. Veer. It's Veer. So he's taken to Veer and as a sex slave. And yeah, that's kind of like the beginning. I love this series. It's one of my favorite fantasy series. It doesn't really sound as my cup of tea when you like think about it, but I love this series. And there were moments when I read this that I felt like it was too difficult to read, that I almost DNF'd it, but I had gotten the second book at the same time as the first book, so I felt like, okay, I already own the second book, I'm gonna continue the series, and I'm really happy that I did. The second and the third book are so much better than this. And I should also say that this is kind of like a very dark fantasy. It involves rape. So there is definitely the trigger warning for rape, torture, graphic depictions of violence, you know, very gory things. happening. So yeah, but I also should say that, you know, when it comes to these kind of stories, I personally, I separate myself from the stories. I can enjoy stories that I wouldn't, like, if it was real life, I would definitely not say like, hey, this is a manual for how a relationship should be. No, I would not do that. I usually say that with like murder mysteries. I do enjoy murder mysteries, but that doesn't mean that I'm for murder and that I would say like, yeah, murder is fine. I don't think murder is good. I don't condone it. But, you know, like, you can read books about assassins and love them. It doesn't mean that you would be for it in real life. And that's how I feel with this series. I don't think that it's a relationship that starts off on the healthy side. Like, I don't want to spoil anything though. This is a male story, so it's a Killian. And I do understand why some people don't like it. I personally don't have a problem with it. I don't feel like I'm selling this series very well though. I love this series. It's a great fantasy series. Yeah. But out of the 3 books, the second and the third book is amazing. So if you feel like you want to pick up this series, don't stop after the first book. Read the second book as well. And if you're still not feeling the story or the characters after the second book, they're not that long either. So I would say give it a chance. And if you want to DNF the first book, I would understand, but I would recommend reading the second book before deciding if you want to give up on the series, because it is better, the second book. The next question is the best final book. So the best book that is the final book. And this can be like, you feel satisfied with the ending of the series now. It's a good ending. Or it can be the best book in the series. Like, you decide which you pick. And I'm gonna say Mockingjay. I really love Mockingjay for how it ended the series. I really, really love Mockingjay. I think it's a great book. I think it's a great final book in the series. It's not my favorite book in the series. I prefer Catching Fire, which I know that a lot of people do. But I feel like this was a satisfying ending to the series. The other book that is a favorite final book, I couldn't pick between this and Mockingjay, so I decided, hey, I'm gonna do both, is Nightblood. Final book in the Frostblood trilogy. I love Frostblood, the trilogy. I think it's absolutely amazing. I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. We follow Ruby, who is this kind of like, she's a fireblood in a world of frostbloods. So the norm is to be a frostblood, and if you're a frostblood, you're more reserved. You kind of have like Elsa in Frozen is the English word. The English name is Frozen. In Swedish, it's Frost. So that's like, frostbloods kind of have that power. They're more reserved, more like level-headed, that kind of thing. And if you're a fireblood, you have a temper and you're hot-blooded, like, you know, like hot temper, that kind of thing. And you are more like a firebender. I hope like these references don't go over your heads. Those are like the best ways to describe it. But there is this kind of rebellion going against the king of this kingdom. And there is a romance in this that I absolutely love. And there are just things in this that I didn't see coming. And I was like, oh my god, twist after twist. I really enjoyed it. I love this series a lot. I know that it has some tropes that are common when it comes to YA fantasy, but I adore this book. And I think that this final book in the series was so good. It was so well done, so satisfying. And I feel like I am okay with this never getting a sequel or a spin-off, because it wrapped the series in such a good way, in my opinion. And then we move on to the worst final book. And there is no other book that I could have chosen for this question. It's Imagine Me. I don't want to talk about it. I hate it. I gave this I either gave it 2 stars or 1 star. I hate this book. I want to pretend that it doesn't exist. Moving on. The next question is a series that deserved another book. And I chose Want. So this is a science fiction book, kind of like apocalyptic vibes. And it's set in Taiwan, and I absolutely love it. Like, the whole atmosphere of this, it involves kind of like an assassination plot, and there's this big class gap. So if you're among the richest, you have like access to better food, clean air, stuff like that. And if you're not part of them, you're called Want. So they're called May, and that means want. I think in Mandarin, I'm not sure. What that means is that you want you don't really have a lot of things. Those, if you have that kind of like privilege that you have access to better care, food, water, clean air, things like that, you're called a yo. And we're following a guy who is a May, so he doesn't have those things, and he gets part of like a rebellion group. There are things that happen in this series that I absolutely want to say, but I can't because spoilers. But I really love this. If you're interested in kind of like a science fiction, apocalyptic sense, futuristic Taipei, I really do recommend it. Even if you are like a fantasy reader, you don't read a lot of sci-fi, I think there are parts of this, like tropes in this, that are common in fantasies. Like, for example, the whole assassination part. The only difference is that this is futuristic, high technology, things like that. But I definitely think that this series, it's a duology. I would love to have like a short story collection in this world, or like a 5 years later kind of sequel. I would love to have a third book in this series. I do completely recommend it, and it's gorgeous. Like, look at them. Absolutely gorgeous. Like, they are absolutely stunning. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. They're absolutely stunning. And now we kind of go back to a previous book that I mentioned. And this question is a book series that should have ended before it did. Shatter Me. This series was perfect. It was supposed to be a trilogy, and this is the trilogy. And then, for whatever reason, they added 3 books. They should not have added 3 books. This trilogy was great. I adore this series so much. And it sucks that they added 3 books that are worse. Like, the 4th book, I think, is fine. The 5th book, no. Like, it was so unnecessary. It was, half the book was flashbacks. And there were, like, parts in this, like, there were parts in these 3 books from Juliet. We follow Juliet. There were parts in these books that were journal entries, and the same journal entries that were in these books returned in the last 3 books. And I'm like, we've already read this. Why do you have them again? We have them here. Like, it felt like it was just to fill out pages. Like, it felt so unnecessary. They were like, that happened multiple times. It wasn't just one journal entry, it was multiple from these into the last 3 books. I don't understand. Unnecessary. And it deserved to stay a trilogy. Just saying. The next question is a series that is perfect to binge read. And I decided, like, usually I would pick a manga for this, or a graphic novel series, but I decided that I didn't want to do that because it was, of course, a manga and a graphic novel series are easy to binge. So I decided to pick a novel series, and I chose To All the Boys I Loved Before because I do really enjoy these. I think the first book and the second book are the best books in the series. The third book I enjoy as well, but it is kind of like a little, I think it's 1 year between these 2 and this book. I think this is perfect to binge read because where the first book ends, the second book begins. And it's a very easy to read series that you kind of just like, I feel like it's a very comforting book series to read in one sitting. And I think it's perfect to binge read. The next question is a series that I regret reading or a series that I won't continue. And there are multiple that I could have picked, but I decided to go with Mortal Instruments. I read the first book, didn't really like it. I don't really enjoy Mortal Instruments, and I don't really like Cassandra Clare either. I really love the concept of these runes giving power. Like, I love the concept. I just did not vibe with the book or the characters. The next question is a series everyone loves but I don't. If you watch other videos of mine, you won't be that surprised, I think. The series that I chose is Heartstopper. It's not because I didn't enjoy them, and it's not because I think they're bad. It's just that I think they're fine. I enjoyed reading them. I will probably read the 5th book, but I don't love it, and I feel like a lot of people reading this gives it 5 stars. Absolutely adore it. Have it like on a shelf on its own and just completely gush over it. And I don't. I understand the love that it has. It's just not for me. I feel like I read this at the wrong time in my life. I should have read this 10 years ago, back when I was figuring myself out and when I was their age. I feel like I would have loved this. And I did watch the TV show. I did prefer the TV show, mainly because my favorite characters in the series are in the TV show more than they are in the books. And also, as I said earlier, I prefer slow burn romance. I would rather have 3 books of pining and 1 book of them together than 1 book and a half of pining and 2 full books of them together. So I feel like that's personal preference, but this is definitely a series that a lot of other people love that I just don't love as much. I enjoy it, I like it, but it's not, you know, yeah. The next question is a favorite genre or trope that I love and a series to go with it. And I picked this duology. Even though I don't like the second book, it shouldn't have gotten a sequel. The first book was amazing. It should have stayed as a standalone. I understand why it got a sequel. And it's Check Please. So this is the first book. I love this so much. And this is the sequel that I could have lived without. It's a good sequel. It's not that it's bad. It's just that I love this so much more. This is a graphic novel duology. We follow Biddy, and he's kind of like a YouTuber. The reason that I picked this for the trope / genre that I love is the fact that this is the sports romance. I love sports romance, and it involves hockey, which is one of my 3 favorite sports. I love hockey, and it has hockey, and it's a Killian, so it's a male romance, involves pining. We have a very likable cast. I adore this. So it's definitely like a genre and a trope that I adore, and a series that I adore. And the next question is a series I used to love but no more. And unfortunately, I have to say Harry Potter. I only have this in German because when everything happened with J.K. Rowling a few years back, I sold everything that I had with Harry Potter. Like, I used to have a shelf dedicated to Harry Potter. I had Lego figurines of Harry Potter, like characters. I had the 7 books and the first book in German. I had wands, I had necklaces and like bracelets connected to Harry Potter. I had like all of these stuff. And then the thing with J.K. Rowling happened, and like it has happened for a long time. There were a lot of things, a lot of discourse with her, and I kept saying I have to separate the author from the books. As kind of like an excuse to keep loving the series. But then one thing happened after another, and then the whole thing with trans people happened, and I just felt like, okay, I can't excuse this anymore, so I sold everything. I still have the wands. I don't know what to do with the wands yet. I decided to keep the German book because it is in German, meaning that it means more to me than the book that I had in English, because it's in German, and German is the language of my heart, so I wanted to keep it. But this is definitely a series that I used to love, but I don't think I will ever reread it. And I actually, the only thing of Harry Potter apart from the wands that I kept were the movies, because I do love the movies more than the books, but I felt like honestly I haven't even touched the movies since everything with J.K. Rowling happened. I don't know if I would rewatch them at this point. I don't feel like I want to. But this, yeah, it's a series that I used to love, but I don't love it anymore. The next question is a series with the best cast, and I chose the We First series. So this series. I'm still sour that I got these 4 books, these 3 books with this cover when I bought them in this cover. Like, I specifically ordered these with the retro sci-fi vibes or sci-fi covers, and I received these. And the issue is that I ordered these in this kind of cover and ordered this separately in this cover because it just came out, so that I could have a matching set. Instead, I have the first 3 books with this kind of cover and the 4th book in this, so they don't match at all. And I'm sad about it because I do prefer this. I prefer this over these. So I'm sad about that, but it's, you know, it is what it is. But this has an amazing cast. and we kind of get to see everyone in the first book, and then the last 3 books focuses on different characters, and I just really love that. I do prefer the first book because we got to see everything, we got to learn about everything, and then I do still enjoy that we got to focus on specific characters and specific issues, and I love how they're kind of like philosophical in a sense. And I've said this, like, I love Star Trek, I love Star Wars as well, but I prefer Star Trek because in sci-fi I love this, like, the exploring part, the learning about different ways of living. Like, I love that, and that's why I love Star Trek so much. And when I found out that this series was great for lovers of Star Trek, I had to read it, and it does not disappoint. The next question is series with the prettiest covers, and there are multiple ones out of the ones that I've already talked about that fits, but the one that I wanted to show off, this. Look at them. Look at them. This is technically a series and technically not a series. I consider this to be a duology, even though it says companion here. Down here it says companion. So I thought, last year I read this early in the year. I enjoyed it, but there is a spoiler on the cover. I'm gonna do this so that you don't see the spoiler. And I thought that that was what the book was about, so I kept waiting for it to happen, and it didn't happen until the last 100 pages or so. And then I found out that it was a spoiler. It was not what the book was about, it was a spoiler. And it's on the front cover, under the title. I don't understand what they thought when they did that. But yeah, I love this. I really enjoyed the first book. And I felt that because this said companion, I thought, hey, that means that the 6 months that has been since I read this doesn't matter because it's a companion. It's not, it's a sequel. You won't understand the beginning of this book, the premise of this, if you haven't read this. You can't just read this. You have to read this before you read this, meaning that, in my opinion, it's a sequel. Because the main characters of this book are in this book. And the main characters of this book are in this. So you need to read this before you read this. And this one, I love this so much. It's one of the best sequels out there, in my opinion. I adore it. But we're here for the covers. Like, look at these covers. They're gorgeous. There is, like, the level of detail going on here is absolutely amazing. Yeah, these covers are absolutely gorgeous. The next question is, do you prefer binge reading a series or waiting in between books? I used to say that I prefer binge reading. Like, I don't want to read a series if it's not complete. But then I picked up My Love Mix-Up, and I thought that all of the books were out. They weren't. So in December I read the first book, and then I realized that, okay, I need to wait until February to read the second book. My Love Mix-Up releases a volume every 2 months, and next year it's gonna release every 3 months. So this time next year the series won't even be completed, and but it's like, I have been okay waiting for 2-3 months in between volumes, even though I would have loved to have all of them right now. But it's fine, I think, with that series. Even if it's really short, it takes 30 minutes to read 1 volume, and you wait 2 months to read 1 volume. But I'm still gonna say binge read. I prefer having a series that I can just read start to finish, and not wait for a next book to be released, or read the first book, wait 1 month to read the second. I prefer to read all of them in one go. That's just like, so for me, the answer to this question is binge a series. The last question is a series you would or have reread. And I could have picked multiple books on this because a lot of them I have reread, but I wanted to go with the series that I really want to reread and tab. Like, I want to tab this series so badly and take notes in margins, and and that series is Frostblood. I talked about it with Nightblood earlier. I love this series so much. It's one of my favorite series. I think this is the favorite series when it comes to fantasy books. Yeah, I have a shelf with favorite series. All of these. Like, you could watch my shelf, it's half empty because most of my favorite series are here on like the pile of books that I just talked about. On that shelf, or on those two shelves with my favorite book series, I only have two series that are fantasy. One of them is the Captive Prince trilogy and the second one is this. I do consider this my favorite fantasy series. I can say that with confidence. I don't read a lot of fantasy, but this series, oh my god, I love it so much. I absolutely love this series a lot. And as I said, as soon as I finished Nightblood, I was like, I need to reread this right now. I need to tab it. I need to take notes of it. I need to do those things. And I said to myself, hey Kevin, don't wait a year, just wait and then you can do it. I still really want to reread that series, which is why I picked it instead of all of the other books that I have reread. I can't wait to reread this book. That was the book series tag. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you want to do it, please tag me so I can watch and see what your answers will be. But thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please leave a like and subscribe if you haven't. And good reading. Bye.